I was drumming professionally for a studio, something interesting happened. You probably wouldn't guess there's an intersection between politics and the business of drumming, but there is. You see, we had what's called, the little ones won't get this, but the high school students will grab this. We had a trade embargo with Cuba. How many of you guys know anything about what I'm talking about? You remember Cuba? Okay, there was a trade embargo with Cuba, and that trade embargo was lifted. Now that may not sound like it has anything to do with drumming, but I got a call the day after the embargo was lifted. It's because there were all of these incredible musicians in Cuba who've been making fantastic music, but they didn't have good recording gear, and the drums that they were using were the same drums they had bought from America back in the 50s. So if you see pictures of Cuba today, you'll see a lot of American cars from back in the 50s, because they're just still using what they had from America decades prior. In the same way that you see 1950s cars going up and down the street in Cuba, you see 1950s drums in all the studios. And those drums haven't aged well. So the only thing that I did, sometimes I would get called to do what's called a cleanup duty, which was a band had a drummer and he couldn't quite execute what he was supposed to do. And so they would have me redo his tracks for him. But this time, I didn't change a thing. When I got the tracks from the Cuban musicians, I learned it note for note exactly. And it was pretty hard for me to learn, because I think that guy had faster hands than I did. The only difference between me and him was that he had faster hands and I just had nicer drums. That was it. When the trade embargo with Cuba was lifted, we were able to remaster their tracks for them and distribute them more in America. And that meant that more Cuban musicians had the ability to have their music listened to by American listeners. So you never guess this, but politics sometimes affect drumming. Another political aspect of drumming is this. I legally cannot tell you what drummers I've done cleanup duty for, because I have to sign what's called an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. So that when you go see that drummer in concert, or when you hear him on the radio, you think it's him, you're actually hearing me. But I legally can't tell you who it is. Now, this, speaking of Latin drumming, Cuban drumming particularly, this is a cowbell. Right? These things all team up to make from various Latin. Here's another one. This is more Caribbean. Everybody say Caribbean. Okay, this is based on a Caribbean instrument, and you'd be surprised, man. Like, it's just a little shaker, right? It's just got little ball bearings inside of like a plastic shell. But would you believe that I've been paid good money just to shake this thing? Right? I'm telling you, you actually can have a career in drumming. It's very doable. Okay, but because listen to this. Anything can be musical. Look at this. This is the simplest instrument in the world, right? But check this out. The egg shaker doesn't get enough respect. Okay? Watch this. Cool, right? The egg shaker. Look at that. Yeah, never stop rooting on the little guy, right? Yeah, it is like a rattlesnake. And then when you combine the cowbell, you combine the sound of like the Caribbean cowbell, like the Caribbean egg shaker, and the cowbell, and the Latin like Latin clave bells, and then African gongo kui. That's what these things are symbolic of. They're sort of a modern, plastic, Americanized iteration of an African instrument called the gongo kui. And in traditional African use of this instrument, there's actually only one rhythm that you're supposed to play, and it goes like this. All right, guys, want to try that with me? Clapping along. Ready? 1, 2, ready, go. Within the mythology around the gongo kui, everybody say gongo kui. Within the gongo kui, the tradition is that the larger of the two is the mother of the smaller one. And this would be the basis for a lot of traditional African tribal dancing. It would be the gongo kui at the very heart of it. And then true, like to jambalaya style, we took the gongo kui and we combined them with the clave bells, which is a Caribbean instrument, and that's what you have on this drum set. You combine that with the cowbell, which is named so because Literally, it was a bell that you'd hang around the neck of a cow. That's not much of a, I don't really have any cool historical stories behind the cowbell. It was just something to make sure that you don't lose your cow. That's the cowbell. But it still sounds pretty cool, I think. You guys tell me what you want to hear the cowbell?
Yeah.
All right, check it out.
More cowbell.